Iron Man VR was originally released for PSVR 2 years ago and is now accessible on Quest 2. The limitations imposed by the hardware of the previous generation are no longer an issue, and as a result, the game is able to reach new heights and realize its full potential. So, watch this video till the end for the full review of Iron Man VR Quest 2. Iron Man was once regarded as a rather average member of the pantheon of Marvel Comics characters, but it has since evolved into one of the most well-known superheroes of the contemporary period. Robert Downey Jr. and Kevin Feige, in their roles as the central pillars of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, are largely credited with bringing the hero to the attention of the general public through a series of film appearances which began with Iron Man in 2008 and eventually resulted in the box office superhit Avengers Endgame in 2019. Iron Man VR was the first attempt after the Marvel Cinematic Universe to offer the hero his own standalone video game outing. It was released just 1 year after Endgame. The final product was an experience that provided a portrayal of the character that was accurate and interesting, together with a robust narrative and exciting gameplay. However, the launching of it on the first-generation PSVR headset was a difficult process. Although it was an excellent game, it was not as good as it could have been due to the substantial technology restrictions of the PSVR and the PlayStation 4. As we pointed out in the review that we mentioned at the time, Iron Man VR for PSVR nailed all of the fundamentals absolutely right. The gameplay was a definite high point, as it gave you the opportunity to experience being Iron Man in every way that was imaginable. The diversity of weapons, the fights, as well as the flying were all an amazing joy, and they were all matched nicely with an original plot that had a storyline that felt both familiar and refreshingly distinct. Everything that we enjoyed about the PSVR edition has been ported over to the Quest 2 version of the game. The foundation of Iron Man VR is just as exciting as it was before, regardless of which platform you play it on. But the fact that it came out on PSVR hardware that was already old and nearing the end of its useful life made the experience less enjoyable overall. The loading times were terrible. It could take several minutes to load just one area. In the same way, the game had a workaround for tracking that made it seem like it was tracking in 360 degrees, but it was still a wired VR experience. If a cable is becoming twisted around your legs, it's going to be hard to enter into the role of Iron Man and feel completely involved in the experience. Still, despite the hardware problems, we thought the experience was good overall. Iron Man, on the other hand, is shown in this latest edition of Quest 2 to be liberated from the confines of outdated technology. Iron Man VR, which was announced at Connect 2022 and is now available for purchase, is unrestricted in both a literal and figurative sense and can be played on the most well-known and widely used virtual reality headset. So what makes Quest 2 a better Iron Man VR experience? Well, the whole campaign and bonus content are still there, but some changes have been made to fit the new setup. First of all, the long load times of PSVR are not an issue here. On Quest 2, loading is smooth and takes almost no time at all. You'll never have to wait more than a few seconds to start having fun. You no longer have any wires, so you can move freely in all directions while playing. Even though this wasn't PSVR's biggest problem, not having to worry about it makes a huge difference. Being able to change directions quickly without worrying is a huge plus that makes the game feel much more real. These are not significant changes, rather, they are more like enhancements to the quality of life, providing solutions to issues that in all likelihood should never have arisen in the first place. Despite this, the overall vibe of this release is one that is much more definite and polished compared to the initial PSVR release. The gameplay itself has always been quite high quality, but now the game is finally functioning exactly as it was designed to. Before we move further down the video, if you want to stay updated with the latest VR games and tech, consider subscribing to our channel to stay on the loop. With that said, let's get back to the video. Aside from these more general enhancements, the Quest 2 port is really good, and its performance as a whole is outstanding. There are a few occasions during hectic fight sequences in which you can feel the Quest 2 failing to keep up with the demand. But all those moments are few and only last for a brief period of time. Overall, the visuals are pretty good, and there are a few moments that really stand out. The increased screen resolution in Quest 2 improves environments and general clarity, while jagged edges are still there, especially when gazing into the distance. The enormous flyover environments can appear a little simple and blocky at times, but the stylized character of the game helps to smooth that out. Even though it's not the most beautiful Quest 2 game, it's not the worst either. Camouflage does use fixed foveated rendering, which can result in some haziness toward the periphery of the field of view, although this is something you will rarely notice. Similarly, there are a few graphic flaws here and there in the cutscenes, but they are easy to forgive and do not take away from the experience as a whole. In addition to the node-based teleportation system that was available in the first PSVR release, the thumbstick can now be used to move around smoothly. It's a welcome feature that brings the environments to life as you explore, although the implementation isn't perfect. The game continues to cut in and out even after you have reached a waypoint using smooth locomotion. It gives the impression that you have been teleported there rather than having walked there. Although this probably helps guarantee that the player is facing the appropriate direction and is oriented appropriately for interactive cutscenes, it does make some of the sequences feel a little bit slower than they should be. It would have been nice to have a transition that was more seamless between fluid locomotion and waypoints, but it's probable that implementing something like that would have needed more work. The current solution is a compromise that is acceptable despite presenting some minor challenges. Iron Man VR provides an experience that is on par with its predecessor in terms of how relaxing it is to use. In addition to the standard vignette customization options, players have access to the snap and smooth turning options. The head-up display of the Iron Man helmet works as its own vignette when the player is soaring through the sky. This helps the player feel more grounded and should significantly reduce nausea for the majority of players. We usually get sick after a lot of artificial movement, but we played the whole Iron Man VR campaign without getting sick once. This shows how well Camouflage thought about making the game comfortable. Iron Man VR on Quest 2 is the definitive version of Camouflage's action-adventure superhero game, and it stands tall as the best version available. The PSVR game came out with a great original story and exciting gameplay. Even for the biggest Marvel and Iron Man fans, it was hard to recommend without cautions because of how long it took to load and how old the hardware was. On Quest 2, those cautions are non-existent. Even though it's been 2 years since the original release, Iron Man VR is still one of the most interesting, well-made, and immersive games on the Quest platform this year. It's a game that employs interactivity to capture the core of the character, much like how Insomniac and Rocksteady did it with Spider-Man and Batman on flat-screen platforms. Specifically, it's a game that's based on the Batman video game franchise. The main difference is that virtual reality enables Camouflage to put the control of the character squarely in the hands of the player, resulting in an experience that is true to the game's roots while simultaneously being significantly more immersive. By acting as your own armor suit and making use of the Quest 2, you are now able to get closer than you ever have been to Tony Stark's core. What would it feel like when you are actually out there protecting the city in Iron Man's suit? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, if you have played this game before, share your thoughts on that as well. Thanks for watching everyone, and before you leave, we got some more amazing VR game videos up our sleeves to spice you up. Do take a look.